Hey, what is up, YouTube? It's Rich. All right, welcome to Super Fun Sunday. I'm really excited about doing this video, actually. So today we're going to look through H.R. Giger's Necronomicon. My desk jacket I've taken off long ago because this book, it gets pretty heavy rotation in my books, and it's one of those things where I I don't really need it on the book. So anyway, how can I transition into this? Okay, I've been a Giger fan since I was probably 15 or 16 years old. I first became aware of him, like many people, through the Alien movie. But I had met a kid in high school who was a really good artist, and just kind of gravitated towards him. We didn't know each other initially, but it's one of those things. We've talked about it a little bit on the YouTube channel, but if you're an artist, generally you sort of catch wind of other people that draw well. This guy that I met, he was really good, and did a lot of spontaneous drawings. And he showed me this book at his house. It was a really fun. We were friends for a year or two, and then I don't honestly know what happened to him. I ran into him one time at Toys R Us of all places. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm working as a professional artist now. If you want to ever try to get work, let me help you. But nothing really came of that. He never really contacted me after that. But anyway, so he turned me on to Giger, Kent Williams, and John J. Muth, all kind of in one night, as I remember it. But anyway, so I've been a huge fan ever since. I won't go into the whole story. I'll do that at another time. That stuff, because I think that this video will pull in people that don't really give a shit about my background. So anyway, so Hans Rudy Giger, a great introduction. If you don't know much of his background, is you should definitely check out the Dark Star movie. It was on Netflix. But he initially started out doing pen and ink drawings as like a teen. He's a jazz musician, pianist, and ultimately became probably one of the greatest like surreal horror painters, conceptual artists ever. I place him in very high standings in terms of what the impact of his art was. What a high level it was actually executed at, and yeah, this is kind of a tribute to that. So I'm not going to guess mediums on this. If these look like earlier drawings, although you'll see themes sort of reoccurring in his stuff. But he was a pretty talented kid artist. This is a photo of his father, I believe. His father was, I think, a pharmacist, and I'm just trying to move through the book kind of efficiently. But yeah, so this stuff it was so appealing to me, and it was so complex. And I mean, I think it definitely was sort of the catalyst of me wanting to do. Well, I remember as a kid, because I knew that he did this with airbrush, and I didn't get this book till quite a bit later, but just seeing it, our school library actually had a copy of it, and so I would check it out all the time as a kid. And trust me, there were many times where I was just like gonna steal it. Just be like, I lost it, how much is it gonna cost till I pay it? Because I mean, it wasn't like you couldn't go online and just buy it, so there was no bookstore that I knew of that sold this. This thing was like, it was like a forbidden book that only the library housed. I'm trying to remember if my friend had it or not. I honestly think that both of us just would check out the book. I think our name, like if you looked at the little sign out sheet, it would just be our names back and forth for like 25 times. But yeah, so what I loved about his work was that apparently he would generally start like just at the corner of a page and then fan out and do pieces. I'm not saying that everything that he drew was that way, So that's what we would try to do. I was like 15 or 16 years old, and yeah, we would just sit and do these like psychedelic sort of really dark, weird drawings. And kind of the same idea where it's just like you just sort of react to what you're putting down, try to build out from there, and it's actually a very, very fun way to draw. Um, you know, but one of the pitfalls of Giger's work is to be influenced by it, is generally to be probably overly influenced by it. So it was something that I actually struggled with for many, many years, because I had so much respect for his work, and I had this really dark art that I wanted to get out of myself. And the temptation would be to do things that were similar to his work, and to me that was a fail right out of the gate. So although I've seen some people that use pretty heavy doses of his work, I think that ultimately, for my opinion, is it's a bit of a mistake. You just have to come up with a completely different sort of genre bending sort of approach to it. I find it interesting actually when people do see my black drawings and actually can pick up on the Giger in it, because there's two in particular that I did intentionally with nods to him, but the other ones are more subtle. I think compositionally maybe they feel the same way, but yeah, there's a few pretty good documentaries that you can find on YouTube also. Just like when you search for Giger and then search for like longer than 20 minutes, any of those videos are good. There's one that a guy just did sort of like these really like high res. It was a shot of him in I think he called the Black Room. He had built that in like the attic of his house, and this is him, I think, at a jazz club. Yeah. Apparently he was a really, really talented musician. Um, but there's tons of symbolism in his work. I don't think that it's completely incidental. I'm not saying that when he would go into the pieces that he was looking to sort of like have a theme. He may have. His interviews are really, really interesting. Sometimes they're in English, many times they're translated. Uh, Based on what I sort of have gathered, he and Ridley Scott actually did work together quite well, and Ridley was incredibly supportive of Giger. There were limitations based on sort of, I don't know if it was 20th Century Fox that produced the first Alien movie, but anyway, I mean, there were parameters of what, time and budget and visually what things could look like. They talk about the eggs being too kind of I don't know if phallic would be the right word, but they had to change that. And Giger was very hands on. I mean, he would literally get in there and work on the huge sculptures, and Ridley said he would come in and find him working and carving and pretty interesting stuff. So this is interesting and something that I just sort of learned recently. Okay, so he did a series of these pieces called Passages. Okay, I always thought that these were 100% hand painted pieces, and some may be, but in one of the documentaries I was watching, he actually, so it's a trash disposal thing. This is quite big compared to what he was painting, but he actually has done versions where he has this piece of machinery and paints it. So I was a little confused when I saw that, because I always thought that these were just 100% painted, but they may be kind of almost like an installation thing that he paints over. So now we're getting into working with an airbrush. So one of the things is I was kind of thinking about this video and, trying to come up with, kind of a somewhat professional sort of representation of Giger. I think that his work kind of demands respect, so I wanted to be respectful of his work and fans really in particular. I'll be honest, when he switched to airbrush, the growth curve was pretty tremendous. These look like they're maybe like prelims or pieces in progress, but he kind of like he acclimated to the airbrush very, very quickly. And it's not like you don't see like a body of work that's sort of the transition of him working from pen and ink to really, really high level airbrush illustrations. So it is interesting that, man, when he got a hold of this tool, he was just off to the races, and the work was incredible. In fact, I think Ridley Scott said when he saw this book, like he knew that this was what they needed for the Alien movie. Like this was going to be so the template. And I believe Dan O'Bannon showed him the work. But I think based on Giger's designs, they were actually able to double the budget. I think the initial budget for Alien was going to be $3 or $4 million. And when they saw this work, they actually doubled it. So from what I remember, I think Star Wars, which came out a year before and was probably filmed in 76 ish, I think the budget for that movie was 11 or 13 million. So Alien was shot for a few million less, but got a decent budget for back in the day. This is a great piece. So this is Leah. Lee? Do they call it Lee? Lee. But a lot of the female faces that you'll see in his work are his. It was his girlfriend, I think. And she sadly she suffered from depression and ended up committing suicide. And some of these pieces were actually painted while she was alive. And in fact, one of them disturbed her so much that she actually destroyed it. And Giger hired someone to restore it. So I don't know what exactly she did to it, but a lot of his, if you see the Dark Star movie, some of these almost look like they're done on huge panels of wood, which might not be far fetched, but they're quite large. I mean, some of them can be 20 feet wide by 8 feet tall. And it's pretty fascinating when they go through his house to see a few of the pretty iconic pieces just sort of like hanging up in his home, like on the walls. They're huge. They're beautiful. There's an elegance to Giger's work, a high level of detail. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of depth on many levels, and it really is just fun to look at. If anything, coming from someone who's been a fan of his work for over 30 years, it only gets better with time. I only appreciate it more. And I can actually, from an artist's point of view, I can talk about some of the limitations of how he works. And you see it actually with people that are influenced by him. So a lot of what he does is front and side views, and right there, it's very, very complicated to go back to that well again and again and really create a lot of images. And there's a digital artist that was doing a lot of kind of Giger style things, and he's really good. I think he's a Japanese artist. There's two in particular that I'm thinking of, but both of them I just kind of saw them hit the wall with the limitations much earlier than Giger did, and they ultimately, one of them works with 3D models, so it's a little bit like he's not. It's not all traditional art. It's, oh yeah, these are foldouts. So this was great too. So that was another thing that was really, really impressive about this book as a kid. Is it's really large. I'm sort of used to larger books now, but it was just rare to really actually see a book that was this big, and the foldouts were just like ridiculous. So there was a level of scope and scale that this stuff had that really, really just was like, holy shit! Like, what is this stuff? But yeah, so even within Giger's body of work, I think that there was a point where he was even having trouble coming up with more ideas, based on that he doesn't turn the figures much in the pieces. It's really what it is it's very complicated to lay out stuff if you're only using kind of front and side views. But turning the camera at all, putting it lower in the image, or dropping it down a few feet and to the left or something like that, it would lose the impact. So the symbolism and the strong sort of just like confrontational feeling of the art, really hinges on that front view. Although, like here, you can see there's perspective. I mean, because the skull, do you see how it's upshot? And then down here, you start to get like it's kind of like a 1 point perspective. I don't know, actually. Sorry, there's talking in the living room. It kind of distracted me. Yeah. So it was interesting too. Is so the alien suit that Giger designed for the first movie, they actually used real human skeleton like bones in it, and also animal. So apparently the suit kind of like was a little stinky. Here's Lee painted up. And I don't know if it's true, but supposedly Giger had like her bones in his living room or something like that. But because his father was a pharmacist, as a kid he actually had a skull that his dad gave him, which Giger said kind of was disturbing to him. Also, I think he had gone to like a museum or something like that and seen like an Egyptian sarcophagus, like a mummy, and those are little moments that he had that kind of impacted his sort of thing. Oh, he's got her name here. Really, really beautiful stuff. It's just so nice. So this is definitely, I don't know if I should put like an age warning on it. I don't know if like YouTube really does it. This is really nice. He does use what would you call it, like templates. I don't know if that would be the right term. Like metal gratings and things like that sometimes to create some of the textures in his work. Sometimes you can see like maybe like that he sprayed airbrush through lace. It depends on the pieces and sort of era of the work, but here's really, really good. What's interesting too is like it's pretty like there wasn't really anything that similar to him before, and I still think that I don't know if horror has really had another artist since him that's made as big of an impact. If you can think of anyone, let me know. But I think his work is like, you know, you figure if this book came out like 78, I don't remember the exact date, but yeah, I don't know if there's anything as iconic and influential. These are great too. This was such a nice kind of shift, is to see actual color in his work, and kind of like these almost like lush like landscape type things. It almost has a little bit of like a Roger Dean kind of feel. And that's a reference to, I'm gonna totally space it right now. Is it a Bocklin painting? I think it's a Bocklin painting. The Island of the Dead or something. It's been a while since I looked at that stuff. It's really cool. This is actually really, really nice. The sort of more fleshy, sort of rotted kind of things. Almost looks like octopus flesh or something from the ocean. But yeah, this is so fun to look at. It's fun to share it. You know, again, there was a level of respect that I kind of felt that I needed to have going into this, and maybe like even humility, because I don't claim to be a Giger expert, although I'm a huge, huge fan. But you know, I mean, you don't want to say like stupid shit, and you know, this is an entertainment video, and we get to look at cool art together. So just take it as that. Try to give a little insight as I can. There's a video on YouTube that's about 12 minutes long, and this guy did a series of essays, and you can buy it on Gumroad for like $4.50. I actually did buy it. I had listened to the first, but it's not the first part. It's like I think he uploaded the third part for free. But it's like a 72-minute essay on Giger's work. It's interesting. I don't completely agree with everything that he says, but that's not really the point. The point is just more like to hear someone talk about it. So, creepy babies. Hello. But yeah, if you don't have this book, I think that any fan of like sort of surrealism or horror or biomechanical, you probably already have it or have a Giger book. But if not, I would totally get this. I would imagine this book has been reprinted many, many times. I almost had an opportunity to buy a real lithograph, and it's funny is in the Dark Star movie they have this old footage of Giger at like a printing place, and they're printing the actual print that I had a chance to buy, but it was really expensive. It was hundreds of dollars for it, and ultimately it is just a poster on fancy paper. So I was like, eh. I don't know if it was signed or not, Mordor. I'm curious if his house is still there, and if his he had a wife that was with him during the Alien era, and then they ultimately, I think, divorced, and then he remarried a Spanish woman who's in the Dark Star video. This is really cool, and I wonder, she probably still lives in the house. Dark Star's really cool. I've watched it probably 50 or 60 times. It's like I can put it on really any time and sort of just enjoy it and listen to it, and I'll work to it or whatever. It's kind of like the Frazetta Painting with Fire documentary for me, where it's like it kind of never get old. It never gets old for me. That's really nice. He was great. He was great with textures, and some of the stuff is really really complicated. Like not just on a level of detail, but some of the lighting and stuff that he does on these different pieces is actually really really well done. Oh yeah. So this is Frederic Kuhn. Kuhn. So this was a photo, and then he kind of painted all this like surreal stuff on it. It's pretty cool. Reminds me of album cover art from like the 70s, which I love. So it's one of those things where I definitely have a sense of nostalgia for Thorgerson, and I'm trying to think of his partner's name. But yeah, there was some pretty cool and visionary graphic artists working in the 70s doing some cool stuff. So the Passage Temple, this is nice. Do 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 do. Who knows? This may, well, it'll definitely be 2 clips. You won't notice it, but my camera's going to shut off in a second. I'll have to edit this video, but this may end up being the longest Giger video on YouTube. Oh no, because the movie is longer. Oh yeah, this was the piece he was talking about. You can see here he's starting to experiment with doing figures at different angles, because I think he was feeling it. I mean, you can just see in his work there's like a wave of work that he started doing. I would have to check the dates. I'm not 100% sure the dates, but you can see that he's trying new things, and kind of trying to break out of the sort of the really really strong body of work that he did right before this stuff, and it's still at a really high level, but yeah, he was definitely trying to figure stuff out, and you'll see different color palettes coming in, and completely different subject matter. It's still dark, but he started doing these like rooms that almost look like they were on like spaceships, but they're very sparse. You'll see. But yeah, it's like, how do you get the impact of a front view? Well, this is that trash can thing, with so I wonder if this is actually, this looks painted to me though, but he would paint over it so much that you couldn't actually tell. Yeah, this is really kick-ass. This is so big. And I'm sure most people have seen it if they're a Giger fan. That like Jonathan Davis from Korn has got like a sculpture that's his mic stand that Hans Rudy did for him, which is was really cool. It's in the new Korn video that actually just was it just dropped a few weeks ago. It's kind of cool because they're playing in the desert and they're from Bakersfield, which is a bit east of me, but not too far. But we used to go see Korn when they were still a club band. And Giger loved cats. In the movie, his cat is really cute. This is a great piece. Oh yeah, Dune. So that's what it was. So Dan O'Bannon, I think, was working on Dune, and there was quite a bit of problems going on with it. But I think he met Giger on that, and then kind of, man, it's so sick. And then when they were pitching Dark Star, or how did it go? So Dark Star was their movie. I think Dark Star ultimately became Alien. But I think Dan was working on Dune with Jodorowsky and was it Mobius and a talented group. I don't know if that documentary is on YouTube also, but the making of Dune is pretty interesting. It came out a few years ago. So it's definitely worth checking out. And this book doesn't actually have all the best pieces. It's got a lot of them, but there's definitely other stuff to seek out if you like this and want to see more. These are pretty interesting. These get pretty intense. It kind of sucks because Google sort of switched the way you can still search for large images, but a year or so ago, you could really pull up like kind of huge images. And some people had uploaded some pretty nice scans of this stuff. It was fun to see. It looks good on a computer screen. So the bottom of this is great. A little bit about his work. Oh man, it would have been so sick if they had more footage of him painting. There's little bits and pieces that you can find, but man, yeah, it's a shame that they didn't get a few hours of him working on one of these. It would be so cool. Who knows? Maybe it is out there somewhere. Oh yeah, these are. I actually like when he uses color. I mean, I think that it's a nice change of pace. I mean, you can see that lace pattern in there. Do you see that? So he laid lace over this and then sprayed color, and it created those little patterns. Different. Oh yeah, so this is like one of the pieces at his house. It's a shame the gatefold isn't on it, but man, that in person would be so intense, so huge. That's really cool. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in, and yeah, H.R. Giger, Hans Rudy Giger, Necronomicon. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and have a great Sunday. All right, bye.